The definition of integers is integers include the number 0 and all positive numbers and all their opposites. Okay, so we kind of saw that visual of the number line before. Integers are both positive and negative whole numbers, and it also includes the number 0. Okay. Further you get in your math career, you'll notice that there are really specific definitions for types of numbers and how we organize our number system. So integers is one of those, along with counting numbers, rational numbers, irrational numbers. So it is important to realize the true definition of integers. Absolute value is the distance from 0 on a number line. Okay, so the absolute value of a number is how far that number is from 0. So the notation for absolute value are bars, straight up and down. So if I have the absolute value of 5, if I look at 5 on a number line, the distance from here to here is 5 units, right? So the absolute value of 5 is simply 5. If I wanted to know the absolute value of -5, -5 would live over here. The distance, right, from -5 to 0 is still 5 units. So the absolute value of -5 is also 5. So this is a huge GED topic. One of the first 5 questions will relate to your knowledge of absolute value and the idea that absolute value is a distance. Okay, so distance is always positive, always. You can surely walk in the negative direction, right? You can walk this way, but it's still 5 units you're walking, right? Or if you walk this way, it's still 5 units you're walking. So no matter what, absolute value will always be positive if the number is within the absolute value brackets. One watch out you have to look for, and I don't believe this is on your IXL lesson, but if you had a negative on the outside, if I have, this is read as the opposite of the absolute value of 5, you pretty much want to view it like so, where you're viewing the absolute value symbol as parentheses, and this you have to bring down, right? So the opposite of the absolute value of 5 is -5. If I had this, the opposite of the absolute value of -5, again, if I look at the absolute value brackets as parentheses, I can solve that first. The absolute value of -5 is 5, and this negative sign or opposite symbol does have to come straight down. So this is just a little sidebar conversation, something you'll definitely see in your math future, but I don't believe it's on this IXL lesson. So as always, feel free to pause the video and work through these examples. The absolute value of numbers, remember, is the distance that number is to 0, and it's always positive if the number is within the brackets. So the absolute value of 26 is 26. Super simple. The absolute value of -3 is 3. Absolute value of 65, 65. Absolute value of -6 is 6. Absolute value of 28, 28. Your IXL lesson for this unit is going to be super fast. Okay? When we're comparing numbers, you really just want to simplify each side and then compare your numbers. So if there's an absolute value symbol, like on the right here, the absolute value of -17, just change that to what that value is. So absolute value of -17 is 17, so 17 equals 17. The absolute value of 59 is 59, and 58 is less than 59. Absolute value of -7 is 7. 7 is greater than 0. Absolute value of 14 is 14. 14 is greater than -14. And the last one, we have the absolute value of 3 is 3. The absolute value of -3 is also 3. 3 equals 3. We mentioned briefly just how integers kind of connect to the real world. We noticed where we talked about banking, weight, football, temperature. So here's just some word examples putting integers into integers represented from a word problem. So Death Valley is the lowest point in the United States is Death Valley, that's in California. Its altitude is negative 282 feet below sea level. Write an integer to represent the altitude of Death Valley. So if we look here in the word problem, often word problems have good keywords where we can pull out of context what's going on here. So if this is 282 feet below sea level, that word below is representing a negative number. So that would be represented as an integer as negative 282. A meteorologist reported that in the month of April, there were 3 inches more rainfall than normal. Write an integer to represent the amount of rainfall above normal in April. So 3 inches more, right? More would be represented as a positive. That's the same thing as we know as just 3. So positive 3 is also just 3. Archimedes, a famous mathematician and physicist, was born in 287 BC. Write an integer to express the year of his birth. So really, we need to know, what does BC mean? Right? What does BC mean? And BC means before Christ. So if we looked at Christ as year 0, right? 287 BC would be a negative 287. Temperature in the world's tropical rainforest, the average temperature of every month is 64 degrees above 0 or higher. So above 0 or higher. Represented as an integer would be a positive 64. A certain stock gained 5 points in one day and lost 4 points the next day. Write integers to represent the stock's gains and losses. So gain, 5 points would be a positive 5, right? Loss, 4 points, would be a loss of 4. So if we were to compute where this stock's total would be at this point, it would be a head 1. Okay? It's really just, this question is really just asking you to represent the 2 separate integers, though. Next, an altitude. An airplane pilot changed his altitude by 100 meters. Describe what this could mean. Okay, so if we think of a plane, an altitude is going up or down. It really doesn't matter which way the plane's going. It can go up by 100, right? Or it can go down by 100. So this question really wants you to think it really could be a positive or negative 100. There's really both answers are acceptable for that question.